All right, hello, welcome to another Dragon Plus live stream. I am your host, as always, Bart Carroll, and with me, as he is every other week, thankfully, is Jeremy Crawford, lead designer of the Player's Handbook and lead rules designer of Dungeons & Dragons.
Hello, everyone. I almost waved too soon. Wait, he's still introducing me. I better pause.
We are going to be covering the most recent Unearthed Arcana for the class feature variants, which has a trove of material to talk through. So we're going to dive right into it. Really quickly, I will just say at 2 p.m., look forward to Beyond Heroes. And for everyone participating in Extra Life, we ran our event at Seattle Children's Hospital on Saturday from 12 to 3. So if you tuned in or participated or spread the word, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
So yes, if you do have questions for class feature variants, please do put them in chat, preface them in question. You might want to, if you haven't already, print out your own copy of Unearthed Arcana. It's also available on the D&D website. Download it now, and you might want to follow along as we've got a lot to cover. So we have, if I am correct in my numberation, 12 classes. Would you like to discuss them in order? Chat choice or roll a d12?
Okay, I love rolling dice.
Okay.
So I think we should let this die decide. But we'll roll. It will tell us which class to go to first.
Yes.
But before we go to that class, I'd love to talk really quickly about the one feature that's here for every class.
Okay.
And I'll talk a little bit about the article as a whole, sort of what's the thought process behind it. All right, let's see. 9.
9. That is the Rogue.
The Rogue. Ooh, the Rogue is a juicy place to start. So this Unearthed Arcana is unlike the ones we've done recently. And in fact, this Unearthed Arcana is unlike any Unearthed Arcana we've ever done in that it provides class feature variants for every class in the Player's Handbook. This is actually an approach I told the community we were going to explore, I think probably 2 years ago or more. I mentioned that we were exploring the possibility of alternative class features, and here they are.
Now I remember that. So yes, promise fulfilled.
Yes. we sometimes work in what I think of as battleship time, and what I mean by that is battleships sometimes take a long time to turn, but we get there. Particularly because we're often working on multiple books at once.
Yes.
Also doing game mechanic experiments like what you see here in this Unearthed Arcana. So finally, its day has come, and what we wanted to do is let people experience classes that they already like in new ways. Say you love playing a cleric, you love playing a rogue, or whatever class it is that's your favorite. You've played a bunch of them over the last 5 years, and you'd love to return to the class, but with a tweak. Maybe 2 tweaks, maybe 3, depending on the class, since each class gets a sort of variable number of variants in this article. So really, it's a new way for you to engage with your class. All of that said, an important thing to clarify is, first off, like all Unearthed Arcana, this is playtest material.
Yes.
It's not an official part of the game. If it does become an official part of the game, as we say in the article, it's up to each dungeon master how much, if any of this, they would like to make available at their table. My recommendation for this kind of thing is DMs, talk with your players, see what they want, and if they're all like, yeah, let's do it, then let them go wild with this material. You might have some players who really don't want to be bothered with considering something outside the Player's Handbook, or maybe one other book like Xanathar's Guide to Everything. And the thing is, that's okay. You don't actually need everyone at a table to adopt these options. Because remember, this is a co-op game. It's okay if people are sort of pulling from different pools of options for this game, because ultimately the characters are all there to support each other. I bring this up because someone might have anxiety that, oh my gosh, my character took one of these new versatility options, but Jane, she didn't want those options for her character. Is my character unbalanced relative to hers? It's a co-op game. Your characters aren't in competition with each other. If Jane doesn't want the option, Jane's character is balanced in that Jane is getting the experience she wants. That's the important thing to remember with options like this. We have designed them so that they can be basically turned on all together, or just maybe one or two of them get turned on by the DM. Maybe for some of the players, but then other players might say, no thanks. Flexibility is really the name of the game here. Okay, so speaking of flexibility,
Yes.
we have a feature that we included for every class in the game
Yes.
if you want to turn it on. It's called Proficiency Versatility, and versatility is a word that's going to come up a lot in our talk today because, again, a big thrust of this is let's give people options. Proficiency Versatility is for any of you out there you've made a character, you get up to 4th level, 8th level, some later level, and you realized, I have never used this history skill. Or I thought my character was going to be an investigator, but I took my character in another direction and have not really leaned on my investigation skill.
Right. Or the campaign has gone slightly different and it's not as useful as maybe I thought it would be.
Or you could even have somebody who maybe you had their backstory. They were a circus performer, and so you gave them proficiency in acrobatics, but in play, you might have decided your character has become bookish, maybe a little bit of a couch potato, and you don't have any use for acrobatics.
People change. Characters change.
We change. I am not as slim as I used to be. And so to represent those sorts of transformations, you can, if you turn on this option, let one of your skill proficiencies go away and then adopt a new one in its place. This, as we say in the description, represents you letting one of your skills atrophy as you pick a new skill proficiency. Now, we have tied this to when you get the ability score improvement feature, partly because skill proficiency represents often an investment of training, of practice, and so it felt narratively a little odd if we say, let you do this every time you leveled up. So we decided, let's instead tie this to your ability score improvements, which are already representing a possible sort of more holistic improvement of your character. Seemed like a perfect time in your character's narrative arc and also in your game mechanical arc to make these sorts of adjustments. I also wanted us to tie it to ability score improvement for another very purposeful reason, and that is classes that get more ability score improvements get more options to swap things out, which we want. We want classes like the fighter to have a bit more flexibility here than, say, a class that gets fewer ability score improvements, because versatility is an element that we highlight a bit more in some classes over others.
All right.
Shall we jump to the rogue?
Let's jump to the rogue. So yes, again, we're looking at the Unearthed Arcana class feature variants. You can download this now from the D&D website. So Proficiency Versatility available for all classes. We rolled our D12. We came up with the rogue. And what new variants are available for the rogue?
The rogue gets one new variant, and it is, as I like to say, it is a juicy one. The rogue's variant is the option, again, if it gets turned on in your game, to be able to use your cunning action to take a new sort of special kind of action that we call aim. For those of you who've played a rogue, you know that cunning action lets you hide, disengage, dash, and then some of our subclasses add additional options for your cunning action. This is adding the ability to aim to those suite of options, and really aim is a way for a rogue who might be locked in melee combat with somebody or who is ensconced in a sniper position to give themselves advantage on their next attack roll. There's a cost, though. The cost is you can't have moved before you aim, and once you aim, your speed is dropped to 0 for the rest of your turn. So you've got to be committed to staying put to line up your shot.
Right.
This has several effects. One, it's a pretty straightforward way for a rogue to set up their sneak attack. Sneak attack requires you either to have advantage on your attack roll, or for you to be attacking somebody who is adjacent to one of your friends. Because you have those two ways of setting up your sneak attack, most rogues are able to sneak attack almost every time they attack. And that's by design. We expect rogues to be able to sneak attack almost all the time.
Yes.
And we also expect rogues to, when they need to hide and whatnot. But sometimes a rogue has no place to hide. They have no buddies helping them set up their shot. And so the rogue here gets to set it up themselves. But it's dangerous. Rogues can be a little squishy. And so if you decide to stay put, that might mean that ogre is running you down. It gives a nice choice. The other twist I love with this is it also gives you the ability to essentially scrub disadvantage off you. Because also one of the rules of sneak attack is, let's say you don't have advantage and you're attacking somebody who's next to one of your buddies. You can sneak attack them, unless you have disadvantage on your attack roll. By aiming, you can get rid of disadvantage, because for everyone who doesn't remember, if you have both advantage and disadvantage,
That was my question.
they cancel each other out.
Okay.
So then you have neither. Sometimes people get confused and they think you have both at the same time. It's impossible.
So I'm going to roll 3 dice. I don't know how that would work.
So yeah, in the rules, there's no such thing as having both disadvantage and advantage. If you have any number of instances of advantage versus any number of instances of disadvantage, they cancel each other out. One instance of disadvantage would cancel out 1,000,000 instances of advantage, and vice versa. So again, one option for the rogue, but it's juicy. How about you roll now to see which class we do next?
Let's go on to another D12. Roll really quickly while we are rolling. I did want to mention, as we spoke quickly off air, Eberron, Rising from the Last War, releases very, very soon. So we'll most likely talk about that in our next Dragon Plus live.
I look forward to it.
Yes, and we've got 2 raffles we'll be doing today. One for a copy of Dungeon Mayhem, and because it is also releasing shortly, one for a copy of Dungeons & Dragons versus Rick and Morty, fantasy role-playing adventure. I think I'm legally required to say all that. It's a 9!
You got to re-roll, my
re-roll,
friend.
Yes. It's going to be 9s all the way down. 11. So that is my class, the Warlock.
Ooh, the Warlock. Okay. The Warlock gets a number of fun new options to play with in this Unearthed Arcana. Starting off with a feature called Spell Versatility. Remember I said you're going to hear that word versatility a lot today.
Yes, it's very thematic to the variants today.
Yeah, so what this feature is going to let the Warlock do is whenever they finish a long rest, they get to replace one spell that they learn from their Pact Magic feature with another spell from the Warlock spell list. The new spell must be the same level as the spell they replace. So here's the context for this. Warlocks are what people sometimes refer to as a spells known class. This is as opposed to the classes that prepare their spells each day. Those classes, the main representatives of that family of spellcasters being the Cleric, the Druid, and the Wizard. Paladins can also prepare their spells. But then there you have classes like the Warlock and the Ranger, who really have and the Sorcerer, who have a list of spells they know that they go back to over and over again. And they can only swap out one of those spells when they level up. And then when they do that swap out, it can be for any spell from their list that they're capable of casting. So this gives a new option. It is, when you finish a long rest, you also get to swap out one, but it has to be the same level as the spell you're swapping out. So not quite as much flexibility as when you level up, but it gives you at least a little bit of flexibility. And the reason why we're introducing this to see what people think, is we know that many people will make basically a spell selection and then have buyer's remorse.
Yes.
And
Speaking as a warlock.
yeah, so you have experienced this buyer's remorse.
Well, I think that it gets to the heart of why the versatility is. There are a great many of fun options in the game, and locking into any one of them, that's your character. And being able to move the parts along the way, try out a new thing along the way, that is just great. That lets you, just gives you more. This has nothing to do with my analogy, but there's more crayons in your box.
I like that analogy.
It was for Emmy's adventure here, but so I wouldn't say completely flaky, where if I get bored with a character, I'll want to have it die so I can make a new one. But I have been known to have that thought process where like, okay, well, I've now played with all of the tricks that this character can do. Maybe I want a completely, but no, if my character now has added options, that gives them a longevity of interest to me.
And that's exactly what we're shooting for. Because, and here's another dimension to this, one of the reasons why I would love to see this get embraced and make it into the game officially is, as we've seen over the last 5 years, people loving 5th edition, playing, countless campaigns of it. One thing that's very clear is every group levels up at a different rate. Meaning, in some groups, you might gain new levels rapidly, and if you're playing a spells known class like the Warlock, you might get to swap out your spells pretty often. Like the wait in a particular campaign might not be very long.
Right.
But we know there are other groups where the satisfaction in their campaign is usually centered on narrative goals, character development. Some groups actually don't like getting up to the high levels, and they really slow down advancement so that they get to stay in sort of their sweet spot.
Yes.
I don't want those groups to be punished because the flexibility mechanic that we put into their class relies on them leveling up. This provides another way for a group that might not level up very often to give spells known characters a little more flexibility, so that they're not waiting, potentially 3 to 5 months of real time before they finally get that spell that they regret taking off their spell list.
And a lot of it is, well, we were in a campaign against frost giants, but now we've moved on to fire giants. So, at what point if I can modify what my character can bring to the adventure accordingly at a much greater rate, my character becomes more useful to me, and I've got a bit more of a loving feeling towards it.
Yeah. Well, and one other thing, and I'm spending a little time on spell versatility because we'll actually come across it in several of the other classes.
Yes.
It's not just a warlock option. I've noticed some concern online, and it's even a concern we discussed on the design team, of questioning, does this step on the toes of classes like the Cleric, the Druid, and the Wizard?
Sure.
The spells prepared classes, Paladin as well, part of their shtick is every day they get to prepare their list of spells.
Yes.
Here's the thing. They get to change their entire list of spells every day.
Right.
So letting another class swap out one spell really is not undermining the feel of those classes or their flexibility. They still have a flexibility that is above and beyond this. This, again, I see as sort of a mercy, particularly for a group where leveling up does not happen very often.
Well, I support and endorse this spell versatility option.
Well, because maybe this will cause you to stop throwing your warlocks off cliffs and seeking some quick end so you can make a new character.
You can ask Mike Merles about that. I had a back channel conversation, like, I think I'm good.
Which, by the way, we've talked about on this show before. I fully support people retiring characters
yes.
when they want to stay in the current campaign, but maybe try something else.
All right, so that's spell versatility for the Warlock. What else can we talk about for the Warlock?
Okay, so the Warlock also gets something that you'll see in several of the other spellcasting classes as well, and that is a list of additional spells to add to that their class spell list. So again, some additional flexibility. In some cases, these are spells that we sort of think of as like, we probably should have had them there in the first place. And then others are just sort of fun experiments to see, well, what would happen if a class suddenly got access to these spells. What I want to jump ahead to is the Warlock also gets something people have been asking for the Warlock for a while, and that is a new Pact boon option. Warlocks in the Player's Handbook have the Pact of the Chain, they have the Pact of the Blade, and then they also have the Pact of the Tome. Those three are joined here by the Pact of the Talisman. This pact, along with the Eldritch Invocations, the new ones in this document that support it, is all about defensive options and also helping your companions. This was a sort of a realm, a play style that we wanted to explore in the Warlock, because we already in the Warlock do a good job of offensive abilities, tricksy abilities, beguiling abilities, whereas we have not provided many options for the Warlock players who would like to be a more sort of support character, making their group more resilient, increasing the group's survivability, that kind of thing. So if you look at the various talisman options, you'll see that together they create this network of aid to a group. My favorite being that if you take one of these invocations, your talisman Warlock can literally save your companion's life, because if they have signed their name on this no, I'm sorry. That's Pact of the Tome. No, the Talisman ones, again, lots of protection.
Yes.
So we also have some invocations for the Pact of the Tome. My favorite one there is the one where they sign their names and literally are prevented from dying, because we also wanted to explore some of these support options in the Pact of the Tome. So Pact of the Tome gets some new invocations. Pact of the Chain gets one, which makes your familiar a little more combat ready by allowing you to have it attack with its bonus action.
That's my pact.
Yeah. So there you go. Pact of the Tome is going to be much better now at also making concentration saving throws.
So you were referencing Gift of the Protectors.
Yes.
The pact for the Pact of the Tome feature.
Yep.
So this one is the ability, as you were talking about, to literally save a companion's
life.
If
If their name is signed in your Book of Shadows and they drop to 0 hit points, the book will cause it so that they drop to 1 hit point instead. But this can happen only once per day. So watch out if you have a member of your group who likes to, like your Warlock, throw themselves off a cliff and waste the life-saving power of your Book of Shadows.
I kind of like the flavor of it, where you can magically erase a name from your book as well. So you can be on the naughty list or the nice list.
That's right. Yes, actually, in fact, you can imagine this. You could play Santa Claus the Warlock, whose Book of Shadows is the naughty and nice list.
Yes.
I fully endorse this character concept. Please, someone make Santa the Warlock with the Pact of the Tome.
Yes. I would love to see any variety of Santa as various figures, how those would play out.
Yes.
I could go a number of ways. But Warlock, certainly one of them.
Yeah. So, the Warlock, I could honestly talk about every single one of these invocations excitedly, because I'm excited about every single one of them. But we're already 30 minutes in, and we have
only 10 more to go.
So please, though, people, send us your questions. If you have any questions or comments about particular invocations, Also, we will, on our website, have a survey soon. Please let us know what you think. Your feedback is vital as we decide where to go next with these variants.
All right. Should we roll the die here for our next class?
3.
3 is the Cleric.
All right. Our friend the Cleric. At least you hope the Cleric is your friend so that they might help keep you alive.
Yes, and I see another versatility coming up.
That's right. Here is that word again, versatility. But instead of having spell versatility, that feature, which clerics don't need because I already mentioned, they prepare their spells every day, they have one now called Cantrip Versatility. So far, in 5th edition, if you pick a cantrip, you are stuck with it. Now, many DMs will allow players to change elements on their character sheet.
Yes.
But we wanted to explore having an official way to do it.
Yes.
And so clerics now, whenever they gain a level in their class, can swap out one of their cleric cantrips for another cleric cantrip. Again, gives a little bit of flexibility. You might have, your character concept might have been, I was a wagon mender, and I had my mending cantrip, but I've never used it.
Yes.
I would really love to have light instead.
It's time to clean out the closet. I never wear this.
That's right. This is so you can invite Marie Kondo onto your character sheet, thank the thing that might have brought you some fun, and say goodbye to it as you invite something else onto your character sheet.
And there is something to what you said at the beginning there. You always want a friendly, cooperative relationship with the Dungeon Master and the players. But it is nice where certain changes like that aren't dependent on DM fiat. It's baked in where, oh, okay, I officially am sanctioned to be able to mix and match a bit along the way.
Exactly. And we also, though, you'll notice we don't say, change all your cantrips. It's just one.
Right.
Each time you level up. The reason for that is we want to provide some additional versatility while at the same time acknowledging some stability in your character is important just for the sake of your character's identity.
Yes.
So that there is a sense of this is still the same person.
Right.
But again, with a little release valve. So you can change something, because part of the reality is part of us being authentic people in our world is we all change.
Yes.
We have abilities that atrophy. I used to be able to play the piano. I used to be able to read music. Anytime now I look at music, I'm like, wow. I have completely, like, if I were a D&D character, I have lost my proficiency with reading music and playing the piano.
It came up in the Goonies. She had to remember her piano lessons from way back when.
Yeah.
Yes, I had trombone lessons from junior high. There's no way that would work out anymore. Yeah, Marie Kondo, she doesn't say throw it all away and start from scratch.
No, keep those things that give you joy.
Yes.
And then say goodbye to the things that, and thank them
Yes.
to the things that might have brought you joy but don't anymore.
This cantrip will now go to a new spellcaster and bring them joy.
Yes, because I can guarantee you there is a player out there who is loving the mending cantrip. So mending is not, its feelings will not be hurt if you say goodbye to it. I bet, especially next week with the release of Eberron Rising from the Last War, there will be many artificers happy to give that mending cantrip new life. All right, so the cleric gets also some new spell options, including a few smites and auras from the paladin spell list. The reason for this is some cleric players like to conceive of their cleric as sort of a holy warrior, whereas there are other cleric players who think of their cleric more of as sort of a priest, who might even walk around in a robe rather than in full armor. We have heard loud and clear from the community that cleric players like to be able to have both archetypes supported within the cleric class, so this is just a part of us providing that dual support. They get a new channel divinity option, which is the ability to basically burn a use of your channel divinity to get back a first level spell slot. This is here because there are times when your turn undead has no use, and even the channel divinity from your subclass might have no use in a particular session, and sometimes even in an entire adventure. This is for that cleric who's like, well, I have this resource, I would love to be able to use it.
Yes.
This gives you an ability to do so. And again, it can be quite nice, giving that cleric just that little extra versatility of, all right, I've got another slot, which I can now use on any of my first level spells I have prepared today.
It's very rewarding to feel useful. So
Yeah.
that's a nice, a feel good.
The final one, Blessed Strikes in the Cleric, is a potential replacement, if a person would like to have it, for two different features in the Cleric class. Every subclass in the Cleric at 8th level gets either the Divine Strike feature or the Potent Spellcasting feature. Divine Strikes boosts your weapon attacks, whereas Potent Spellcasting boosts your cantrip damage. Blessed Strikes, if you're willing to forego Potent Spellcasting or Divine Strike, instead just gives you a D8 of extra radiant damage that you can apply to a weapon strike or a spell. And the reason why we wanted to offer this up as an option is many clerics are versatile, in that many clerics will go back and forth between fighting with a weapon and using their spells. And so we wanted to give clerics the ability to sort of walk that versatile road and take Blessed Strikes as an alternative.
Okay.
Now, the limitation with Blessed Strikes is that it affects only one of your damage rolls on a turn. So it's a little constrained, but more flexible in its application. Shall we roll for the next class?
Sure. Really quickly, I'm just going to mention again, we're going through the class feature variants from Unearthed Arcana. I know we've got one, if not our second raffle is underway at the moment. We've been going through class by class. I've got one question here. It's a bit broad from the beginning. You mentioned a lot of these features tend to hit when they get to their ability score increase.
So only one of the features
Oh,
does.
sorry. If people choose to take a feat instead of their ability score increase, could they still swap out one skill proficiency?
Yes, the intention is yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because even if you use the feat optional rule, you are still hitting ability score improvement on your class table. And so really the intent here is when you hit that, even if you take a feat instead, you would still get to swap out one of your skill proficiencies.
Okay.
And that is definitely the example of something that we could make clearer in a final version of this. So I love that question.
So we have rolled a 6. We are on the monk. The mad monk.
All right, the monk. The monk gets 3 feature options, and one of which has 2 sub-options. So the first one, again, hitting on this note of flexibility, gives monks who might have some extra weapon proficiencies because of their race or some other source, say they're multiclassing, gives them the ability to customize their list of monk weapons. Monks normally, for their monk weapons, get all simple melee weapons and short swords. But you do have some characters who enter the monk class, take elves for instance. Many elves have bonus weapon proficiencies. Dwarves also often have bonus weapon proficiencies. We would love for those monks to be able to use those weapon proficiencies as monk weapons, and so we decided to give them this customizable list. With the limitations that we have built in, this also is going to work for a monk who might decide they want darts to be a monk weapon. They want a sling to be a monk weapon, and those are proficiencies all monks start with. But the current monk weapon rule in the player's handbook does not allow those ranged weapons or any of a character's other weapon proficiencies to apply.
Narratively, that does make sense in a way. As an elf, I've been training with these particular weapons, as all elves do. But as a monk, as an elven monk, I would still be training with these weapons as all elves do. So how would those play in? So this is, it seems like a narratively logical means to do so, with certain restrictions. Can't be heavy, can't be two-handed. So it's not breaking the mechanics of a monk weapon, but still keeping it in the flavor of the character you're trying to play.
Exactly. Now, if any of you out there, if you're playing a monk and you're thinking, well, I'm not playing a race that gives me weapon proficiencies, I'm not multi-classing, then I would say stick with the monk weapons in the player's handbook, because there you just get all your simple melee weapons and move right along. This is really meant for the character who has these extra goodies, and this is a way for the monk to really incorporate those goodies into their monk play. The second level monk feature, Key Fueled Strike. It says, if you spend 1 key or more as part of your action on your turn, you can then immediately make 1 unarmed strike as a bonus action. Monks already have a number of built-in features that use the bonus action. So it's important for me to remind everyone here, you can only ever take 1 bonus action on your turn. So what this is not doing is giving you an extra bonus action. Here's what it is doing. And it's rather subtle. And this is why I love having conversations like this with you and with all of you listening, so we can get into sometimes the subtleties of game options like this. Many monks will have no use for this. But for the monks this is designed for, this will be a godsend. If you're playing a Way of Shadow monk, or a Way of the Four Elements monk, or any other monk who has a special action that essentially gobbles up your action on your turn, does not include any of the regular triggers for your sort of martial arts bonus attack or your flurry of blows, this now gives you a way to use your subclasses' key burning abilities and still get in your unarmed strike. So for instance, if you're playing a Way of the Four Elements monk and you spend a key point to unleash one of your elemental spells, you can also go kabam with your fist or your foot or whatever it is you're using to make your unarmed strike in addition to your spell casting. So this is going to be a boon for monks who are members of certain subclasses.
And still keeps the monkish unarmed striking flavor exceptionally strong across, a bit more across the board. Is that the intent?
Exactly. And we also purposefully designed this to be subclass agnostic, because I mentioned 2 subclasses, but features like this appear here and there in monk subclasses and could potentially in the future. So in a way, we're future-proofing that, if this is embraced and becomes part of the game, it means, monks henceforth, if they have abilities like that, they're still going to get to enjoy their unarmed strikes. Finally, monks have 2 new ways to spend ki. One is to improve their ranged attacks, and another is actually for a monk to heal themselves. This is very on target in terms of the monk's flavor. A lot of the monk's abilities are about the health of their bodies, the resilience, the physical resilience. This is a way for the monk who is on the verge of death to tap into their internal ki and save themselves until maybe somebody with a little more powerful healing can give them even more of their hit points back. So in many ways, this is an oh crap ki option of, I have all this ki I haven't spent, but by golly, I'm about to die. Well, buddy, burn that ki and live to fight another day.
This very flavorful energy that I'm imbued with. Can I turn it back on myself in case of dire straits?
Yeah, exactly. You want to roll for our next one?
Should we roll or should we go to chat? Because we've got. Tell you what. If it's a new number, we'll go to the new number. If it's a repeat number, I'll ask chat which class we should cover next. And it is a new class, the Sorcerer.
All right, the Sorcerer.
I think that was Bren 77. First answer was the Sorcerer as well. So.
All right, so, the Sorcerer is casting a spell. Oh no, there it is. For a moment, I thought the sorcerer had
It vanished.
vanished from my printout. Okay, so the sorcerer gets some new spells again added to their list. They have spell versatility, which we have already talked about, a way for them to maybe deal with some buyer's remorse, also to have some character development and a bit more versatility. Pardon me, with the sorcerer in particular, by the way, we have often gotten the feedback that people would like a bit more choice when it comes to the spells they know. So spell versatility is especially a boon for sorcerer players who have asked for that. We also have some new Font of Magic options. Font of Magic is the name of the feature in the Sorcerer that gives them their sorcery points, that wonderful resource that allows the Sorcerer to manipulate their own magic, which again is a wonderful part of their story as people who have magic in their very blood. It makes sense that they, of all people, should be able to manipulate their own magic. So we allow sorcerers now with this option to make a temporary magic item by transferring some of their innate magic into that item, which is specifically must be a weapon.
Okay.
So if you've ever found yourself in a situation where it's like, oh my goodness, Janet's barbarian can't hit that creature because of their resistance to non-magical weapons, the sorcerer, if no one has the magic weapon spell prepared, the sorcerer can just channel some raw magic into that weapon to get the job done. Also, the sorcerer can, in a pinch, if they really desperately need advantage on an ability check, they can give that to themselves. And they also have some resilience they can give themselves, like the monk, but rather than true healing, they're able to give themselves temporary hit points by channeling some of their internal magical reserve. For those of you who don't know, temporary hit points are almost like ablative armor, or sort of a almost like you can imagine it like a force field that gets sort of punched through and then it goes away, and then your real hit points start taking the damage.
We play a lot of Pokemon Go, and there's always you throw up the defensive shield.
Yes.
And then it's gone. So.
And so you can imagine where the monk is literally healing themselves. The sorcerer is instead using their magic to shield themselves, to give themselves this arcane fortitude. Then we give the sorcerer some new metamagic options. Metamagic is one of the main ways a sorcerer spends their sorcery points. And I think the metamagic option that we've provided that many people will especially love is Elemental Spell, which allows the sorcerer to cast a spell that deals one type of damage and then change that damage type to another. Like if you've ever wanted to be able to cast Thunderball instead of Fireball, well, Elemental Spell is how you can do it.
James Bond would approve.
Yes, yes. We also have given metamagic options for ignoring half cover and 3/4 cover. And then in that case where, like, oh my gosh, you really, really, really want your spell to hit, but you missed, an Erring spell is a metamagic option that allows the sorcerer to re-roll. The nice thing about this metamagic option is it can be paired with other metamagic options. Normally you can apply only one to a spell, but let's say you've already spent sorcery points on a spell and then it misses. This is, in a way, you can spend some more sorcery points to try to get your investment through.
It's a bit of the fallacy of sunk costs, so where it's like,
I know.
God bless it, I cast this thing, it is going to work. But it's nice to always have, like, then again, narratively, it's like you're in a pivotal moment, it's a key scene, you just want your cool thing to go off, and it fizzled. Like, just a second chance.
And of course, as you rightly imply, the dark reality is your reroll could also miss.
Right, yes. Well, right. So fair is fair. Like, you're spending points to try it again, but it doesn't mean that it's going to succeed this time. You just get another reroll.
Just one more pull on the slot machine's lever.
Exactly. We've got a couple of questions, one from the monk, one from from the Sorcerer. You want to field those before we
Sure.
move on?
Yeah.
We're talking about the Sorcerer, so how would a wild magic sorcerer utilize versatile spells with the new feature when the subclass has no class spells?
Oh, so spell versatility applies to your sorcerer spells overall,
Okay.
not subclass spells.
Okay.
So spell versatility allows you to replace one of the sorcerer spells you know with another one, and this is for sorcerers no matter what their subclass is.
I always feel like this is trying to stump Jeremy, and it never works. But that's a good thing. Looking back at the monk quickly, we had a question. Does the new bonus action attack option open up for flurry of blows, or just a single bonus action attack?
So again, as I mentioned, you only ever get one bonus action.
Okay.
So if you've already flurry of blowed bonus actioned, wow, that was a tortured sentence.
Right, the verbiage for...
Yes, you cannot do it again.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one bonus action on your turn. You've got to choose.
I like that you modified both flurry and blow. The flurried of blowed.
Your flurries of blows.
Your flurries of, yes. Attorneys general.
Yes.
It's which one gets the...
Oh, I love internal plurals.
Yes, they're very
passers-by.
tricky. Yeah.
Yes.
Ooh, I have never... Passers-by,
Yeah.
passerbys.
Yeah.
How many people get that incorrect, I imagine?
Probably many.
I'm guaranteed, yes.
Internal plurals. It's just like one of the true signs a person is a word nerd. If we're getting goosebumps because of all that S inside the word.
So are we wrapped up with the Sorcerer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Again, we're getting about 10 till the top of the hour, so we've been going.
I think we can do one more class.
We'll do one more. Chat, how about chat? Chat, give us a class that we haven't hit yet that you would like us to cover. We have covered the Cleric, the Monk, the Rogue, the Sorcerer, and the
Ranger.
Warlock. Cover the Ranger.
All right, the Ranger. Let's do it.
Okay.
The Ranger.
Oh, and really quick, I'll interject. Your questions coming in, we are collecting them. If we don't get through them this time, because we've got a lot of the initial material to introduce and talk through, we will talk through your questions as best we can in a future episode. So the Ranger.
The Ranger has 2.5 pages.
Yeah. So
in this article. Okay, so I'll skim over the simple ones. Ranger gets spell versatility. We've already talked about it. Rangers in particular are very constrained in the number of spells they know and the number of spell slots they have. Mm-hmm. So I really, really hope the audience embraces spell versatility, if for no one else than the Ranger. Because I think this will be a godsend for many Ranger players. The Ranger also has an expanded spell list. We were, when expanding the Ranger list, particularly mindful of beefing up the Ranger's ability to support their party. Also, we were looking at the theme of survivability, because we want the Ranger to be sort of the ultimate wilderness survivor, and also the person who, is most likely, if they're trapped on their own somewhere, they're going to make it.
Yes.
Or if you're trapped with one other person and then they're the Ranger's going to get the two of you through. And also some of these spells pair wonderfully if you happen to be a Beastmaster Ranger, because a number of these spells have amazing interactions with the Beast Companion. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's not time for me to go into it, but read some of these spells carefully. Think about your Beastmaster's companion, and oh boy, you're going to have some fun. So, the Ranger has more replacement options than any of the other classes in this article. We've heard your feedback over the years loud and clear on the Ranger, and as I said a couple of years ago, for the Ranger in particular, we wanted to explore some alternatives. So here they are. Starting with Deft Explorer. This is a new take on the Natural Explorer feature, allowing the Ranger to have a set of survival skills that are not dependent on particular types of terrain. Even though many of us who've played D&D for decades love the flavor of Rangers having a connection to particular terrain types,
Yes.
or having a familiarity with particular foes, the fact is honestly, in edition after edition, that great narrative often has gameplay difficulty because where you're adventuring and what you're fighting can so often really just be up to chance depending on what the DM selects.
Yes.
Now, this is often easy for a DM to address in a home game because the DM knows, okay, I've got this ranger at my table. The ranger has these particular terrain types they're associated with, these favored enemies, and the DM can customize the adventure to really bring as much joy to that ranger player as possible. But if you're in a convention game or somebody is running a published adventure by the book, it can be difficult for some ranger players to feel like they're maximizing the potential of these very flavorful abilities.
Sure.
And so we created some alternatives that essentially are going to deliver no matter what the terrain is. And then when we get to the favored enemy alternative, no matter what it is you're fighting. Deft Explorer gives you 3 different sub-options. You get to pick, one of them when you get the feature, then you pick another one at 6th level and yet another one at 10th. It gives you some expertise and skills. It makes you extremely mobile, and also one of the most exciting things lurking in here is in the tireless feature, where in addition to the ranger being able to give themselves temporary hit points, they can also, at the end of a short rest, shrug off a level of exhaustion. This, by the way, we know is really good in certain circumstances, particularly if you multi-class and you happen to be a berserker barbarian. We're well aware of that. As I've often mentioned before, when we do Unearthed Arcana, when we do class options, they almost never reflect the balance we later do for multi-classing, which is one of the reasons why often low-level things, when they end up in their final form, are changed, and often, frankly, less powerful, because we then have to account for if someone's dipping in from another class, what's the effect. But here you get to see this in its sort of single class glory.
Use it while you can.
Yes. Enjoy it in your playtesting, because I can guarantee you, if this makes it into a book, it will not be in this form. But the theme of it is likely to make it. And that, in Unearthed Arcana, is often what we're testing. We really want to see, do people groove on the themes that we're presenting? And then we get into the fine-tuning. Favored Foe, as I mentioned, is an alternative to Favored Enemy. We were careful to state in Favored Foe that the creature that you target with this new feature is still technically your favored enemy. We had to do that to make sure that this feature still works with the Ranger's 20th level feature, because that feature refers to your favored enemy. So anyone, if you're wondering, does Favored Foe work with your 20th level feature? Indeed it does, and it does so intentionally. That's why you see the word favored enemy right there in the feature. So what does it do? It gives the Ranger a free Hunter's Mark spell. It's added to their list of spells known and does not take up a spot on that list. And a certain number of times a day you get to cast this spell without using spell slots and even without concentration. That last part, I hate to break it to you all, this is also another case of that is unlikely to survive final game development, because lifting concentration, we wanted to test it.
Just to make sure that it was going to be widely implemented and used initially to see how it worked?
It was a concept we were just enchanted by.
Yes.
But anytime we fool around with this concept, we almost always have to pull back from it, because especially at low level, this becomes a blinking beacon to people to dip in from other classes to get a Hunter's Mark that they can cast without spell slots and without concentration, meaning it would then pair with every concentration spell in the game. But that said, everything else about this feature I think, is a really fantastic way for a Ranger to, in the moment, say, you are my favorite enemy, and to use their primal magic to make that designation a reality.
So again, sort of narratively, it's not just, well, my favorite enemy, my backstory is orcs attacked the village or whatever. In my campaign, we never encounter orcs. However, that takes away one of the Ranger's tricks from the bag of tricks. This one lets them keep that sort of, I'm going to lock on to an enemy and concentrate on them flavor of it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I am deciding in the moment,
Yes.
you are my favorite enemy right now. And 10 minutes from now, someone else might be my favorite enemy. And because honestly, again, as rich as that classic flavor can be, and if people love it, they're free to continue to use that flavor in the favorite enemy feature in the player's handbook.
Yeah.
For some campaigns, it just does not pan out. We then get to a new fighting style option. The Ranger, the Paladin, and the Fighter all get new fighting style options in this article. Some of the options are shared by all three of the classes, and then each of the classes gets an option that is unique to that class. The option unique to the Ranger is the ability basically to forego taking any of the traditional fighting styles and instead learn 2 cantrips from the Druid spell list. We wanted to put this out there because some Rangers really love to lean into the nature magic side of the class,
Yes.
and this allows them to lean even further. How are we doing on time? Can I go further in the Ranger?
We've got about 2 minutes here.
Oh my gosh, there is so much in the Ranger. All right, I'm going to have to speed talk. Rangers also now get the option to use a druidic focus as a spellcasting focus. They get a bunch of new spell options in primal awareness. This is a potential replacement for primeval awareness in the player's handbook. They get a more supernatural fade away ability that replaces hide in plain sight, and then Beastmasters. We decided in this article to give Beastmasters 2 new beast options. So we actually did not touch the Beastmasters features in the player's handbook.
Okay.
Instead, we provided 2 new stat blocks of beasts a Beastmaster could befriend, and then in those stat blocks address many of the concerns people have had about the Beastmaster. Now, we designed these to work seamlessly with the Beastmaster's features. So if you're a Beastmaster Ranger and you're wondering, does the scaling up functions inside your Ranger's Companion feature apply to these beasts? The answer is yes. Everything in your subclass works with these beasts, and then they give you a little something extra. One of the things I also love about these beasts is it allows Rangers to customize the beast's appearances. You decide, if you pick the Beast of the Air, what sort of airborne beast it is. If you choose the Beast of the Earth, similarly, you decide what sort of terrestrial beast this is. The other great thing here is the flexibility that we're offering in that if there is an animal type that you want because it has a burrowing speed or it constricts people or it poisons people, this takes none of those options away. You can still pick any of those beasts from the monster manual or another book. This really just adds some more beasts to your menu of options, and that will be especially appealing for anybody who has wanted their beast to maybe act more often, because these beasts have a bonus action attack. These beasts also have some amped up hit points. They have saving throw proficiencies. They can understand your speech. If they die, you can bring them back by burning a spell slot. There is a lot of really juicy material packed into these 2 stat blocks.
All right.
Did I do it? Did I get up? 2:01.
2:01, all right. Well, we started, I think, at 1:01, so we're at 60 minutes even. So
Yeah,
we'll call it dead on. All right, so we've been talking through the class feature variants from the Unearthed Arcana. Please do take a look at the material. It's up on the D&D website as we speak. A survey will follow in the coming days as well, so we hope you try out the material around your table, and please give us your thoughts about them as well. We're going to switch over here in a minute to Beyond Heroes over on the D&D Beyond channel. Just again, a couple reminders. We've got Eberron Rising from the Last War is coming out very, very shortly later this month, as well as Dungeons & Dragons versus Rick and Morty. We'll talk about Eberron in a future Dragon Plus live stream here. Congratulations to our raffle winners. Thanks, as always, to our followers, our subscribers, our viewers for spending an hour out of your time today. Thank you, as always, to our moderators. And finally, for Extra Life, we've got a couple of adventure material pieces up on the DM's Guild now as we speak. We've got Infernal Machine Rebuild and Adventure for levels 5 to 10. It is a beefy 111 pages. And then we've got Adventure with Muck.
So cute.
I know. This one, we're going to go into this one a bit more next week. This one created by Emi Tanji with additional material by Adam Lee and Chris Lindsay. It is a glorious grab bag of activities, coloring, map drawing, monster creation for kids of all ages. So we'll dive into that a bit more as well. That's also up on the DM's Guild, I believe, for $5. So hopefully worth consideration. All proceeds do benefit Extra Life and the Children Miracle Network hospitals. So in any case, thank you for spending an hour out of your day with us. We got through many but not all of the classes. We'll talk through some more in a future live stream, as well as many of your questions as well. So until then.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.